A very good evening to you, Juliet. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So the reports that we're getting of some 118 opposition members who've been charged. Let's just first start with the clarity. Were they rounded up and arrested before being taken to court? So how did this play out?
So good evening, it's Episa and everyone listening. So it seems they were rounded up from various locations. It's unclear. We just started getting messages of this large number of people from the opposition, affiliated with the opposition party, who have been assembled on various charges of unlawful assembly, conspiracy to commit a felony, being a common nuisance, and the obstruction of night patrol officers. So charges that are rather obscure, not particularly telling, but nonetheless have been the basis for them to be rounded up and assembled at the various stations that they were collected at.
And according to the information, is it only NUP members who've been arrested? If so, is this just a targeted response to what their leader Bobi Wine has been saying? Because we understand that he's in hiding given the threats that have been issued.
So Bobi Wine is indeed in hiding, as he has also indicated through various interviews that he has conducted. It may appear that it's largely NUP members who have been assembled, or rather charged, following the reports that we have received. The NUP is the opposition party that is dominantly challenging the NRM, which is the National Resistance Movement, which is aligned with President Yoweri Museveni. So it looks like it was very targeted at NUP members and individuals affiliated with the NUP.
And we've seen reports of Bobi Wine reportedly saying that he has no intention of challenging Museveni's win, but at the same time that he does have irrefutable proof that the elections were rigged and that there was fraud that occurred. Can you just share a little bit more about what's coming out from those reports?
So, of course, online, there are various videos going around of ballots being ticked, ballot sheets being ticked. There are various reports, as often happens during times of elections. Sometimes it is past images being used in the current time. However, there are some where members online argue that it is imagery and footage from the most recent elections. Of rather questionable activities that may have influenced the elections. But nonetheless, these are scenes that we have witnessed quite a couple of times in recent elections, and they seem to have become commonplace, including in this year's election. So many questions remain there, but a lot of conspiracy theories remain online. Some verifiable, some really stories that are floating around simply to stir up emotion, and can also be a bit problematic.
And therein lies the rub, isn't that, Juliet? Because when we spoke about this internet shutdown, it was because President Museveni was saying the precise aim of it is to, ensure that there is no misinformation, yet at the same time we've seen the impact that lack of communication has had on the elections, including the turn up. So those who have recorded some of this information, are they speaking up, speaking out, even if it is anonymously?
Not so much. When we study online narratives, we see content floating around, people reacting to it, but not so much an ownership of the content. So there's a lot of reactions going on. And in those reactions are sentiments of distrust in the election process. There's sentiment of apathy as well. But on the other hand, there is arguments that this is footage or information generated by opposition parties, or actors rather, to cast a shadow on the elections. So there's quite a bit of tug and pull going on. But this, again, was witnessed previously, and it was also the basis for the shutdown that we experienced last year, which also led to Facebook being shut down in 2021, and it remained shut down all the way into this election. So there was a tension there that social media also picked up, but acted on narratives that were being pushed by the ruling party and its and entities and individuals affiliated with it.
No, I mean, some of the allegations that Bobi Wine has made is that 10 people were killed at the house of his deputy president in Butambala. Do we know of any such incidents of summary killings or people being beaten? Because these are some of the allegations that we've heard, that there has been a massive violent crackdown on forces of change, as it were.
So there have been crackdowns in the lead up to the elections, during the elections, and of course post the elections. It's difficult to ascertain numbers previously due to the complete shutdown that we experienced. And now perhaps there is a sense of self-censorship in what people are putting out there, those who may have witnessed incidents, but we also have a media that was heavily controlled in the type of information that they put out in terms of covering risks or, riots, in terms of the narratives that they also shared. So there's a bit of a gray area there. With the commentary that Bobi Wine has put out, we have yet to get more figures. We have yet to get more information on what is happening out there. But once again, with the amount of self-censorship, with the amount of information that is flying around that is difficult to verify in some instances, some of these numbers will only be realized, might not be realized immediately. We might need a bit of time to ascertain exactly what has happened and the extent of impact it has had on human lives.
And then there are reports of General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is said to have made threats against Bobi Wine himself. Bobi Wine claiming that he said he has been reported in the past of making such threats against Bobi Wine and X. Can you just give us a bit of context here, who he is and what his behavior has been in the past, given the accusations of erratic behavior and the fact that he is not only President Museveni's son, but is widely believed to be his preferred successor?
So Muhoozi Kainerugaba is indeed the president's son, and is the head of the army essentially in Uganda. His online narrative has been quite disturbing, not only now but also in previous instances. It carries a very sensitive undercurrent of intolerance and hate speech, which is what we are seeing with some of the narratives he's pushing out, including this announcement that he has made calling for Bobi Wine to make himself available within 48 hours. There is a very dangerous narrative that forms part of the post that he puts out there. And, even the reactions that we see people posting in his in response to his posts brings up another element of what is actually happening in the social psyche of Ugandans. And again, that shows that we are not quite up to the dark when it comes to the tensions that the country is facing, including along political lines, but also along tribal lines and economic lines. And those are narratives that Muhoozi seems to really enjoy, could call it that, putting out on his social media posts, primarily on X. They rile people up, but they're also quite dangerous in the extent of dangerous speech that they seem to promote in these spaces and in a country as I'd say sensitive as Uganda, considering the time that we're in.
And beyond that, the fact that, as you mentioned, General Kainerugaba is the army chief. So is the scene, his post, being interpreted as an official military directive that could be or should be acted on?
Well, he's the head of chief, but there are processes that should be followed in such instances. Is social media the platform to make such an announcement? What due process has been followed? That remains unclear at the moment. If it is a directive simply instructed via social media, there may be a basis perhaps not to show up. If additional information or rather communication has been provided, we have not seen it in the public domain. Perhaps it should not be in the public domain, but there is nothing supporting such that such an act has been pursued. So it remains a very interesting time to see whether Bobi Wine will react to that request that has apparently come primarily via social media and perhaps not through any other formal channel that we know of.
And General Kainerugaba also writing that, I quote, "We have killed 22 NUP terrorists." Has this been verified? Is this taken as official government communication?
Official government communication should come via more offices such as the GCIC, which is the Government Communications and Interaction Center. Muhoozi has a history of some problematic content posted in online spaces. And that is what makes some of his announcements there content that one needs to really tread carefully with. Numbers might be higher based on what we've been seeing over, some of the reports that have been coming up over the last couple of days in terms of the lives lost, in terms of the NUP lives lost in recent days. But I would not call that a formal announcement. I think there are various other channels where formal communication can be pursued, or alternately back up what has been posted on his social media. So we need a bit of additional information from sources beyond his social media account to verify what he's putting out there.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Much appreciated. Ugandan digital rights researcher and consultant Juliet Nanfuka. Always a pleasure to speak to you. And that brings the time to 21 minutes past 9.